Hey guys, um, obviously I cannot be in class today. I'm not in class today. I had a sick kid, so I'm staying home. But I wanted to go ahead and record this lecture just in case we needed an added resource, and that way we have something posted online for anybody that may need to do the work over the weekend or maybe missing class on Monday. But this way, I've got it already posted, especially because this is information that I think is really interesting and adds a lot of context and layering to the Bible, especially to the book of Genesis. And when we get into Exodus, it'll be pretty important for the book of Exodus. It's something that we can even see kind of shadowing and echoing all the way through the prophets as well. It's just kind of there going forward. So we want to understand it, and we're also going to do some work of looking back today. As we got to get my coffee here, guys. As we study this stuff, as we practice this, because again, practice makes perfect, which is kind of the theme of our semester, right? Is doing so much work similarly on new things to practice and to grapple with how we read the Bible to build those skills. So that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It is Unit 1, Day 6 today. So if you're taking good notes, which hopefully, even though this is a video and you feel like you can pause it, things like that, you still please take notes. I'm sure you guys went over already in class. You've already gone over the importance of notes. You've gone over what the unit exam in 3 more class periods, right? It's today, and then you have 2 class periods of more material, and then the unit exam. And that unit exam will require notes for the written portion. I've put some things in there to make it a little bit tricky, right? As I'm sure the substitute fellow, which please treat them with respect, right? But I'm sure the fellow has covered pretty thoroughly now what that exam will be. The tricky part that I've put in there of you'll be given a sheet of paper to write on that tells you which unit or which day you have to give me the writing sample from, but it doesn't tell you which passage we covered that day. So you have to independently find that, be able to have that in your notes. And if it's in your notes and you have good notes from that day, the test will be pretty easy. If you don't, it's gonna be really hard. So that being said, hopefully your notes are good and your notes are good for today. Today we're not actually covering any specific Bible passage. What we're going to do is use it as a day to review Bible passages we've already looked at and begin this practice of going back with new ideas, right? When we get new paradigms, which is what we're going to do today, anytime we get a new paradigm to understand the Bible through, it's helpful to go back to things we've already understood and re-examine in light of those things and say, what was I thinking then? What was I doing the first time I examined this passage? And now, with this new information, do I notice things I didn't? Was I perhaps a little wrong, or was I very right? And I can bolster more, with more information there. So throughout the semester, we're finding new structures, new paradigms. It's what I'm calling them, right? Or diagrams. We made a diagram. It's a paradigm, but we made it as a diagram for our myth to history, our myth to history continuum, right? That starts as myth, then it gets less myth-like as we go, or we start at history and it gets more myth-like as we go, whichever way you want to have that flow. But today we're going to look at cosmologies. Now, this is a big word, cosmologies. It's cosmo, Cosmologies, cosmologies. It's cosmic logic, right? It's the galaxy logic. Sorry, my dog is barking there, and you might hear an airplane go overhead. I live near the airport, so we might have an unexpected visitor. One of my dogs might pop up on this outdoor couch with me. But cosmologies is what we're looking at today, and they're pretty diverse. But there's a lot of diverse. We're going to call them cosmogonies. Cosmogonies are the specifics of how the earth works, how the world works, right? The Bible Genesis has a pretty specific cosmogony. You guys have seen this in your Genesis textbook. The Enuma Elish has a specific cosmogony. We examined that a little bit. But cosmologies is the larger term for how the deities or the powers that be are functioning in each of these stories. And as we've discussed, there's multiple traditions being blended in together, not only in the Tanakh, right, meaning the Old Testament, as we refer to it as modern people, but the Tanakh and the Torah specifically, these first 5 books, it has several blended traditions. And we've been able to see pretty distinctly, especially in this Abraham story, these traditions start mashing up together, right? Getting redacted together and put together, and sometimes it feels awkward. Sometimes you get stories on top of themselves, where it's the same story told different times, or name changes are happening, and things need to be explained, right? So when that happens as well, the original authors of those stories, the original traditions those stories came from, each of them seem to have their own cosmology, or how the deities work, how many gods there are even, how God functions, how God interacts with us. They each have their understanding of this. And it's there, and it's very clear. And I think as I started explaining these in more detail in just a moment, you're going to start being able to think back and go, oh yeah, I do see a little bit of each of these. Or when we look at some stories next class, and we're going to look at the story of Jacob and Esau, and it's pretty clear cosmologies there that are not the same as they were in Genesis 1. That's for sure, right? And we're going to look at the word for that later. Not today, but I'll give it to you anyways, because you guys know me. You know I love giving big words. The word is multivocality, right? Multi, you know how to spell multi, and vocal, V-O-C-A-L. We know how to spell that. Multivocal, right? It's many voices of the text. So that's what we're witnessing here. All right. So just like our myth to history, we had the 5 types. We're going to have 5 overarching types of cosmology. We're also then going to look at 3 specific models that all 5 of those can function in between. Just like with myth or history or mytho-history, they each had origin stories or law and order stories or polemic, and they could kind of dance in between all 3 of those. They could touch each one of those. A story could have an emphasis of one. It could be primarily from one, but it would have touch points on each one. So we're going to look at first the 5 major types of cosmology, and I want to make sure you guys understand you have to have this in your notes, all right? This is something to have written down as I go over these. I know typically I'm able to write them on the board. Today I can't, but at least you can pause and catch it as I talk. Hopefully that's a good practice there. So I'm going to talk about these. First, I want to say that we, all as modern people, kind of have an assumed one, right? Modern Christians, we might have one that we assume, and we assume that the Bible always has that. Modern people, maybe if you're in here and you're one of the kids that feels like you can't say that you're leaning towards agnosticism or atheism, maybe you have one personally that you don't really talk about, right? And a lot of people would say that science seems to assume one, right? Science assumes a cosmology that has a lot of randomness and billions of years. It assumes that, right? The cosmology is just this atheistic cosmology where there's no God, it's just things happen. And so we're going to look at what cosmologies did the biblical authors have? And we're gonna go through these. All right. Firstly, it's important to note that each religion has their own. Some religions, some texts like ours, right? I think when we get through the Bible as a whole, it has one pretty clear cosmology on the whole, but the stories inside of that will have multiple cosmologies, and they're all semi-unique. Every religion will have semi-unique ones. So we're going to look at our big structures. So hopefully we've started taking some notes here of cosmology. We have that written down. We understand that cosmology means how the universe works, right? How it functions. And we will go over this. We need to know that there are archetypes. So this is the term I'm using is our 5 archetypes. If you don't know what an archetype is, it means it's the perfect example of it, right? It's the most clear definition of something. Archetype is spelled A-R-C-H, A-R-C-H-E, and then type, T-Y-P-E-S, archetype. Archetypes. Archetypes. So we're going to look at our first one here. This is our magic cosmology. This one is like Harry Potter. All right. This is that things typically in a magic cosmology, things kind of function on their own. And you get magic. All right. We're going to see this in the Bible. We could see this in several settings. We can see this in next class's story. We're going to see, I would argue, hints of a magic cosmology where God's not really necessarily doing things, but things happen that seem to just be magical, right? The character next class is going to be seemingly doing magic to make sheep reproduce in a certain way, and it's kind of strange. But if you understand it with this magic cosmology, that the author assumes magic is real, the author assumes magic can alter the way the world functions, that's what's going on, right? We don't need the deity there for paranormal things outside of the normal and ordinary to happen, because humans, or sometimes it's the deities are doing the magic, but magic happens, right? That magic is the thing that we can do. So I can control elements of the world by waving a wand or using the force, right? Whatever it may be. So magic is our first type of cosmology. This is a quick, easy, understandable definition that you might want to write down. So for magic cosmology, this is our first one, but things function on their own. But magic is controllable by humans, and it can change the outcome of events. So, say yesterday we had a Packers game, right? Some people might snap into a magic cosmology on accident and say, well, if I wear this Packers jersey, the one that I never wash and that I smell when I wear, if I wear it, they'll win, right? It's magic. Just doing rituals that humans can attain and humans can do will change the outcome of specific events. I can make the Packers win if I let my hair grow out more and dance around and I yell and scream at the TV. Our next is what we call magico-mythical, or magic mythical, or mytho-magical. I think mytho-magical is probably a snappier way to say that. The text I've pulled this from says magico-mythical. I don't like that term. I think mytho-magical sounds better. So mytho-magical is what I'm just going to say. But mytho-magical is that magical forces, like staffs or spells, can change outcomes and influence gods, but you have both gods and magic. So you have gods here, the gods are doing things. Typically they're less powerful. We see this in the Exodus story when Moses and Aaron with the staff come in, and they go to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh actually has his guys do some magic, and it explains that here's my little dog. Here's one of them. This one's Wilson. He's going to hang out with me for a little while. So we have mytho-magical, is that there are gods, there are deities that can do things, right? And typically in this world, the deities are not all powerful, but you can do magic and you have gods, right? You have both of these things are in play. Next is what we call monotheistic. This is the one that we assume all the time. We assume that the Bible will have this. If we are Christians, typically we have, hopefully, this is what we have, right? And people will assume that the Bible always has this, but it's not always the case. But I also want to give some nuances about monotheism, right? So monotheism is that there's one all-powerful God, right? Monotheism or monotheistic, 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 monotheistic. This is that there's one God above all the others that is capable of controlling all things, right? This God knows everything. This God is all powerful. Now, in some monotheistic situations, this God is not all loving, but this God is in fact all powerful and all capable. And I want to be very clear to say that monotheism does not necessarily, so I want you guys to grab this, write this down, because this is definitely the case when we get to the Psalms, when we get to the book of Exodus, even when we get to some things next class. Monotheism does not assume that there's only one God, right? That's not the case. Not in the Tanakh. Monotheism assumes that there's one God above everybody else. But you can still have, in monotheism, other sorts of spiritual beings. Even under this setting is modern Christians that believe in the devil, and I'm going to go ahead and say not all Christians believe that the Bible teaches the devil, believe that there is a devil or that there are demons. But many do, most do, and this would fall under that, right? That there are lesser spiritual beings, whether you call them gods or not, there are lesser spiritual beings underneath this monotheistic God, and that the monotheistic God either controls them or that they are under his or her authority, right? Under the main God's authority. So they are less powerful, but there is the one all-powerful God, the one that is capable of altering things at will in a monotheistic setting. Now, we're going to then go to the next one. This is the last of the 5. This is the last one we see in the Bible. This one we don't see as often in the Bible. People, curiously, some students have said, oh, I think I see it here. And even they'll say, yeah, we get deistic and magic sometimes. And I think that's fair, but our next one is deistic. That's spelled D-E-I-S-T-I-C. D-E-I-S-T-I-C. It's that a God sets things in motions. Now they run hands off and they're just running automatically. So God sets things in motion and leaves. It's gone, right? We don't know where God is in this situation. Maybe God pops back in for a little bit, and maybe God leaves again. God shows up, does some stuff, and then just backs out and seems to be gone for whatever amount of time. We get this in the Bible in some deeply mournful texts, right? We've talked this week at school. We had the passing of a teacher that I don't know that any of you knew, but this is during these times of lament, right? These times of great pain. Sometimes we feel deistic, right? We feel this because we just go, God, where are you? I was speaking with a student that had some extreme pain and lament going on in their lives, and this is what we kind of said as we cried and sat together. We kind of were left in this moment of, God, where were you in this? Where are you in this, right? And the book of Lamentations is a whole book in the Bible. It's five chapters, 5 short chapters, and we're going to read it late in the semester. We're going to read it together. And we're going to see this deism pop up there. It's not saying God isn't real or God is gone. It's just this wondering and asking, God, where are you? I can't find you. Right? I mean, the book of Lamentations actually closes with, God, where are you? That's the question it ends on. It just asks that and then leaves and it's over. Right? Deism is this, that things are running and they're going and God put things in motion, but they're gone. So sometimes it's mournful. Sometimes it just is a matter of fact, this is how the world works. God did things and God's not around right now. We're just doing stuff on our own. So you could put deism with, that mytho-magical thing where God started things, but now we're kind of free to run things on our own. And then the final, and I don't know that you could say that at all the Bible has this one. I think maybe you could. I don't know. But this last one is what we probably assume, a lot of modern people assume. It's called atheistic. All right, atheistic. I think we can usually spell this one, but A-T-H-E-I-S-T-I-C. Atheistic. Atheists. Right? This is that it's similar to deistic, right? Things are happening. God's not present. God's not doing things. But it's also that God never was. Things just happened on their own. It's kind of this chaotic setting, this random setting. Maybe there's an order to things, but it's not set up with intention by a singular or even a group of beings. It just is, right? It's atheistic. It's just things just are, and they're running on their own. I don't know that this ever shows up, right? This is, if we're reading the Bible from a kind of negative lens, we would look at all these other ones. If we're looking at this atheistic lens, look at all the other ones and people would just go, well, all of that is just primitive superstition, right? They're just primitives. They don't know any better. This one is kind of condescending to ancient people and assuming they can't be smart or intelligent. But atheistic is there, and it's worth mentioning as we discuss cosmologies. Maybe you will see. I've had students argue pretty well, pretty successfully that I think this text seems this atheistic thing. And maybe so. So it's worth mentioning. All right. So our 5, if you're double checking your notes, you should have magic as your first one. You should have mytho-magical or magico-mythical or something in between, right? You should have monotheism, and you should have the note on monotheism that says, not always one God. Again, a lot of the Bible assumes many gods. We're going to look at that throughout this semester more. A lot of the Bible assumes many gods, but there's one in charge for monotheism. Deistic. God is gone. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe she chose to leave. She didn't like what she created. Who knows? And atheistic, just there is no God. All right, so those are our big 5. Now, we're going to look at some quick models as well. We want to examine some models that each of these 5 are going to fall into periodically. And again, we're going to see these pop up, and then so we have those 5 archetypes. Now we're going to look at some models, all right? And what I mean by this is that you can have monotheistic fall into any of these, sort of. You could have deism fall into these, so we're going to look at these. All right, and when I'm asking you for paragraphs about this stuff, and I'm asking you to examine the text with this, I'm going to want both. I'm going to want which of these 5 major archetypes and which of these 3 models is being modeled here. So our first one is called hands-on. This is, some of you guys have hands-on teachers, right? That there's constant supervision. They are kind of micromanaging, or they are on top of things. They are doing things constantly, right? Scripture, we find this when God directly meddles in, and I don't mean he's a little tinkerer, but like he's definitely showing up in everyday affairs of people. He's controlling everyday affairs, right? That God is actively involved. You can hear that airplane coming over. God is actively involved in the events, the individual events of a person's life. So we find this quite a bit as hands-on. This is what we kind of assume a lot of times, but it's hands-on. Autopilot, this is one I would say we get a blending of hands-on and autopilot in our Noah story, because the autopilot is that things are mostly functioning on their own, but they can be changed or interrupted by magical forces or by gods, right? So you could have the magic, and yeah, things are running on their own. It doesn't take magic to run things. You don't have to constantly be casting new spells for things to happen, but you can cast spells for things to happen. Or God doesn't have to actively wake up each day and do things for things to happen. They're just functioning on their own. And then every once in a while, God will get very invested in one specific thing, or someone will cast magic and change and alter some things. We see this a lot when God lets things play out for long durations of time, and then usually steps in, right? Like, again, the Noah story. God lets the evil play out and then finally goes, enough's enough, I'm stepping in. That things are running, things are functioning on their own. This is probably how I run class, right? I let it be on autopilot, that you guys can just function on your own. I'll come check in. Do you need me? No? Okay. Have fun, right? Autopilot functioning. The last, this is what maybe you guys also have teachers like this, or maybe this is the one I am, but there's limited power, right? Limited power, there's impersonal forces that function on their own and can change or control deities. Here's what I mean by this. The god or gods there have some power, but people can actually affect them, right? So limited power model is that God or gods in the story are able to do things and control things, but they only have so much ability, right? We see this assumed by people in some of the Bible stories that actually we might skip over this one with Elijah and Elisha. And if you know the story of Elijah and the gods of Baal, right? Elijah starts mocking them. He's a prophet. He has this challenge of get your God to cast lightning on these wet sticks, and whoever's God will make fire. That's the God that is right. And they assume we have to help our God. We have to do things to benefit him, to get him to go and do things. Now, Elijah correctly assumes a autopilot monotheistic God, where God's letting things function, but will come and intervene as needed. And they have limited power, right? Each God, this God controls the oceans, this God controls this thing. Each God controls different things and only has so much ability in what they change, and that we can actually cast spells to help and benefit God or to weaken God. Now, again, these are our three models that each of these types will fall into. So we have hands-on, that constant supervision, constant control. God shows up physically and manifests himself physically at times. Then we have autopilot, where God lets things function on their own, lets things play out the way they play out, and then steps in as needed and controls things. And then limited power, that the God is only capable of doing so much, that we kind of need to assist them, right? That we need to change God's mind, get God to change his mind or her mind, and that we can assist or prevent things from happening. So those are our big cosmologies. So you guys need to examine today. The work today is then to take these to look back at some texts we've looked at before already throughout the semester. The teacher will assign each group or section of the room, each table will decide each one. You guys are looking at a story from Unit 1, Day 1, Unit 1, Day 2, etc. And just rewriting now, what is the cosmology here? All right, so have a good day. Please email with any questions. Ask your teacher to hopefully explain some more of this as you need. Rewatch this video as needed. Make sure your notes are good and ready. You have all of this down, because I will be expecting to see this in your notebook soon. Thank you.